the guy you were living with wasn't home, and she would come over there then, and that's when a lot of this, like the heavy sexual stuff, happened. Is that true?
Yeah.
Did you actually have sex with Jeanne Mayo?
Yeah. The part really kind of throws you off is like this would be before like a weekend retreat. She's getting ready to go on stage, and she would bring me up there and like make out, French kissing right before she goes on stage. And then after that, and once we got back, the guy I was living with would be gone, and then she would come over, lay out on the couch and making out and rubbing, and one thing leading to another, and it was just a really weird situation.
Hello, everybody. Mike Donahue here with Brian May, and we have a special guest, and I'm going to get to him in a minute, but it's going to be a crazy night. This is a bonus podcast because of the content. We want to just give you a little warning that this is going to be a little rated R here. A couple months ago, we had Eileen Fires on the podcast, and Eileen came on and told her story about Jeanne and going back to Bellevue, going into Rockford. But one of the things that she mentioned in her testimony was that Jeanne had confessed to her that she had had a sexual relationship with a student at Bellevue Christian Academy. And when Eileen did confront her, Jeanne did admit that it was true. And so we have actually the guy that that was happening to back when he was 16, 17 years old. His name is Shawn Weaver. Shawn, how's it going, man?
Good. Glad to be on, I guess.
Yeah. Under these circumstances, a little
right,
crazy. But, well, we want to just kind of ask you some questions. First of all, how did you end up in Bellevue? And tell us just backstory a little bit about your life and how crazy it was.
Sure. So just growing up, my mom was single mom, not married. She was dating some guy at the time, in and out of foster care, parties every weekend. Anytime we went to like foster care, she was going through rehab. So it would be, she's in a detox for like 3 months and just mass chaos pretty much. When I got older and running the streets, had an opportunity during probably my middle school, junior high, I think, to go see my brother Scott. He was in the Air Force at the time in Bellevue. And so I saved up a bunch of money. I was kind of living on my own at the time. I found a place above a Korean store to live in. And Scott's like, hey, come and see me. So I was like, well, let me see if I can get a ticket. So I ended up getting a Greyhound bus ticket. Got down there, and one of his friends, I think it was Dallas Holmes at the time, he picked me up, and I couldn't stay on the post with him, so I ended up staying with Dallas for about a week and seeing Scott on and off his work schedule. And then I was getting ready to go back, and I was pretty much going to be homeless because I just left everything cold turkey to go see my brother. And somebody came up and said, hey, there's a week long. Do you want to go? And I was like, what's a week long? Everyone, usually asks, what's a week long? And it's like, well, it's a church gathering. We go camping for like a week. And I said, I don't have the money. And they said, well, we got you covered. I was like, okay. So, of course, we went to this week long. I got assigned to Jeanne Mayo's rap cell at the time. And of course, during that, the rap cells were always very intimate, very vulnerable time. And I kind of cracked. It was like my breaking point with all the pressures of just kind of growing up in my situation. I didn't really realize how bad it was till I started opening up in this cell group and realizing, I didn't have a real mom. My mom was not present. I didn't have a bunch of support. I was kind of survival mode kind of guy. And in my perspective, I thought, this is normal. This was my normal. So like, I'm thinking everybody else has got to be pretty much the same. So no pity party. I mean, it just is what it is. But by the time I got done with the cell group, because of course every that whole week is like continually you're sharing more stuff, and I started realizing there was things that I had repressed that I saw happen to my mom, being raped and beat up by a bunch of thugs, and it was just a mess. And so I kind of like poured all this stuff out in the cell group, and by the time we were on the bus ride back, um, she said, he asked me if I'd like to go to a Christian school. And I was like, yeah. I mean, I'm like kind of this radical saved kind of young kid. I'm like just trying to find my way. And she's like, well, there's a guy that will take you in, and we're going to send you to a private school, a Christian school. Well, I was pretty ecstatic about all that. Got back, got settled in. I don't know if you want me to go through the water bug issue, but you want me to scan over that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So
That's
anyway,
for
so
podcast.
I move in with this guy. He takes me in. Super nice guy. I start going to school, and I'm getting gifts, all these like new clothes, stuff I just never had before. Like there's like brand new clothes. I'm used to like thrift store stuff, but then started going to school. Well, at the same time, I was meeting with Jeannie like regularly. Like she basically said she was going to be my second mom. And so, and I just kind of through the week long, I just was kind of attached to her, because I just had like become so vulnerable that, I mean, I'd never been like that before. So sharing that with her kind of made me kind of make this connection. And, we started, she ended up like taking me out of classes and meeting with me outside of school and after church group, because there was Sprino, obviously. So there'd be like before Sprino, it'd be after Sprino. And first it just started out where it was like just hugging, and then it ended up being like a kiss on the cheek, and then the kiss moved over to the lips. And it was just a slow progression. And it was, I'm already getting nervous kind of talking about it because I just haven't really spoken about it a whole lot. But it just built up into something that it probably shouldn't have been, and it started really affecting me. I obviously she would give me these special privileges as take me out of school. She'd take me out of class and then take me into her office or the principal's office because she would be gone. It was just me and her in there, and there'd be making out in there. There was rubbing and touching and stuff that was just really inappropriate. But at the time, you just kind of, as a young kid, I just felt kind of boxed in. And we had talked about this earlier, but just like, what guy ever feels like he's being raped by a female? I mean, it's just one of those things. You just like, as a kid, you're just like, what do I do with this? How do I get out of that?
Is that the way you felt? You felt like you were being raped?
No, not at the time. I didn't realize it till like later, when I was really getting frustrated. Like I didn't want no part of it. I wanted to pull out of that. And then I started thinking, I'm like, is this really like rape? I'm like, no. It wasn't really talked about a lot then, And so
Right.
you just felt kind of suckered in. Like I felt like I was like this kind of slave. Like I didn't get to say no. If she wanted to meet, I didn't get to say no. I didn't have an option
Why?
because that's what she wanted.
So let me just ask you a question in speaking to that dynamic a little bit. Now, I taught at that school. I know that tuition wasn't cheap. Um, I'm pretty sure she was paying your tuition or making sure that it was forgiven. She was obviously making sure you had a place to stay. Did that play into that decision at all? Do you feel like that she used those things as leverage over you? Or that, whether it was explicit or implicit, did it feel that way to you?
Yeah, in some ways. I mean, being from off the street, there's nothing that's free. I mean, there's just not. It's just not. That's not how it happens. You know, I mean, I don't care what it is. I mean, and so you feel like you have to be loyal to them. You know, I mean, they've done this great deed. I mean, they took me off the streets. I mean, I didn't have to work. I could be a kid again because you know, when you're on the streets, it's like you just survival mode 24/7, figuring out what's going to happen next or some type of preventive maintenance if you can. But being in that situation relieved me. I mean, it's one of the first times I was able to play sports. I never was able to play sports before. Um, Before I was going to school and then I was in a work program, working two jobs actually. I worked nights. I worked right after school from like 2 to 5, and then from like 7 to like 6 in the morning, trying to just make money, you know. And I figured after a while, like, this is a useless, so I got into other stuff. But that she brought me out of all that, and so I was almost like she built my identity. That's how I felt. Like she was building my identity. I wasn't building my identity because I felt like I was supposed to be in a safe zone. Like I didn't have to worry about that stuff anymore. Somebody else was doing that. And that's what she did. She brought me in to go to a Christian school, which I never thought in the world that I'd ever go to a Christian Academy. I mean, to me, me being there amidst all those other pastors' kids, I felt like they were little spoiled brats. But who am I to say, you know?
You weren't wrong.
You know what I mean? I'm like, and they had mothers and fathers. I didn't have it either, you know? So I look at them, I think you guys are so ungrateful, you know? But then, you know, after these encounters with Jeannie, and then I had to make a transition from living with this guy and then transitioning to live with one of my teachers. That whole mentality of thinking I could have an older woman, and I had that kind of impact on an older woman, affected my relationship with my new family. And so it just like trickled. There was a big trickle effect. And then I kind of just like let it be after I left. But she would meet with me and try to bribe me with gifts. Some of them were expensive gifts. Some of them were just like sentimental because I was very sentimental. She picked up on that, honed in on that. She'd give me like dolls, like she gave me a little doll, like a Indian doll, because that's what she wore. She was an Indian lady, you know, in our week long. It's just little symbolic stuff, just be little stuff. And then she met me in, if I'm jumping too quick, she met me in Illinois when I was living there. And then like giving me a Gucci watch and trying to say, is everything okay between us, kind of thing. And, you know, never saying it, but implying it, kind of thing. And I had tried to make contact with her after that, just to come clean, because it'd been some years, and I'm like, I just need to get it out, like let her know like what she did was not right. But she basically like stonewalled me and offered more stuff.
Wow. You'd mentioned before we got on the air that there was times when she knew that the guy you were living with wasn't home, and she would come over there then, and that's when a lot of this, like the heavy sexual stuff, happened. Is that true?
Yeah. There's
Yeah. So you actually, I mean, I hate to put you on the spot, Shawn,
no.
but did you actually have sex with Jeanne Mayo?
Yeah. So when it started, the part really kind of throws you off is like this would be before like a weekend retreat. Like she's getting ready to go on stage, and she would bring me up there and like make out, French kissing right before she goes on stage. And then after that, and once we got back, then the guy I was living with would be gone, and then she would come over and, you know, lay out on the couch and making out and rubbing, and one thing leading to another. And was just it was just a really weird situation.
Yeah. I'm sorry, man. And I hate to, have you say that, but I think for the listeners, they need to hear that, because they need to hear that not that we want to scale it, because any kind of sexual advancement on a minor is heinous. But when it goes to that level of, of sexual intercourse with a minor, that's really heinous. That's a whole different level. I mean, again, I don't want to scale it, but because it's
No.
all horrible. But I'm really sorry. I'm really, really sorry that you went through that. Did you go through counseling at all? Did you get any help
No,
for
actually, I
that?
didn't. No, I've thought through the years, how did this affect me? Did it really affect me? Did I just stay in denial, or am I, did I make a bigger deal out of it than what it was? You know what I mean? Like, you kind of cover code it. Like, you got to cover it with something, because like guy getting raped, or you don't hear that like that. So I'm like, well, but then when you listen to her when she talks about her being raped as a young girl, and then now I'm faced with the fact that what she's doing to me is that, yes,
Yeah.
we see now that it's rape, but you in the time you're like, I felt boxed in again. Like, where am I going to go? What do I have? I mean, basically, she took my
Yeah. I want.
situation and
So
framed me into a cage, and I was her slave, basically. But me thinking I'm a slave, she gave me gifts. I'm like, if you do this, then you get gifts. If you be quiet, you get gifts.
right.
You get freedoms, and you get, and that's kind of how it was.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
So none of us are lawyers here. I don't know the statutory definition of rape, but I think what people listening to this need to understand is understand the power dynamic that was here, right? She used her power, which was pretty much absolute, right? Because
Around
you
Bellevue
you
it
could
was.
you could be gone in a second, Sean.
Yeah.
She could you'd be out of the school, you'd be out of the house, you'd be back on the street. So she used that power dynamic to take advantage of you, and whether that was for her pleasure or whatever reason, that is serious grooming. That is serious abuse, and no one listening to this should see it any differently than that.
Right. And just to quantify what he just said, I was sexually molested when I was a kid. I've said this on the podcast before. I was too, but that does not mean that I have the right to perpetrate anybody else. Right. I mean, and the key there is I've heard her say this: hurt people hurt people. I've heard her say it, but there's a pause in between there, like hurt people, pause, hurt people. The pause is important. You have to get help. You got to deal with your shit, because if you don't, you're gonna pass that shit on. And her problem, this is what Jeanne Mayo's problem is she's incredibly talented. She's one of the most talented human beings I've ever been around in my life. And because of that, she used it as a smokescreen to cover, like you said, you felt boxed in. Here's why you felt boxed in my opinion, is that there was nobody you could go to. You couldn't
Right.
tell anybody. Gary Hoyt is a coward. So is Rick Lormer. So is Rod Whitlock. If you'd gone to them, they would have covered her. They would have covered her. I'm guessing, because they covered other stuff. So who could you have gone to? There was no authority over her. Her husband wasn't going to believe you. He was going to put you on a bus back to Minnesota. There's no in that. And I'm sorry, man. That's just awful.
Yeah. Echo that. Echo that. I'm so sorry that happened to you, Sean. I told you today on the phone. I mean, I was part of that system, and I didn't see those things going on, and that weighs heavy on my heart. But man, I'm so sorry that happened to you in that circumstances. No one deserves that. Yeah, and it's just all part of the pattern. I mean, we saw it, and you mentioned this that I mean, you felt when you were in that situation, it felt like there was no one you could talk to. Well, that was because she built this ethos around her of loyalty, and it's like she had these people who were incredibly loyal to her, and I'm sure that you felt like if you talked to one of them, they wouldn't believe you anyway, and that created an insulation around her that allowed her to to get away with a lot of things. There's still people today, Shawn, who when presented the facts just choose to look the other way. So to
Yeah, Rick
I don't
Rick Lormer, Rod Whitlock. I'm going to name them again. Gary Hoyt, Lori Hoyt, they still believe she's some woman of God, like Rory Cobbs and Shar Cobbs. They had her into their church. They still believe she's some super woman of God, and she raped
right.
a 16-year-old,
Yeah,
and we've presented evidence over and over about her.
yeah,
She covered up sexual predatory behavior from coaches, principals, teachers. She's a menace. She's out of control menace,
yeah,
but they still have
and
her come speak. She's supposed
yeah,
to speak in my town. She's supposed to speak in Kearney, Nebraska here in November 14th and 15th. And Jeanne Mayo, if you're watching this, if they end up having you, I'm going to be there. I'm going to sit in that audience and I'm going to stare you right in the face.
yeah. We'll be there with matching T-shirts, Jeannie. You'll be able to pick us out easily.
Let's roll now. Well, Shawn, I want to say before we wrap this up that I am really proud of you for
Yeah,
coming on here and telling your story. Brian and I both are, and um, I know it's not easy. Both of us have told our stories before. Both of us have shed tears talking about our stories. What went on with her and other stuff, and I know how tough it is, especially admitting that you were part of a sexual encounter with an older person. I mean, all that guilt and shame could pile up on you. And please don't let it. Please know that she was 100% responsible for what she did. She was an adult. She was the head of a school that should have protected you and should have cared about you and nurtured you for the right reasons, not so they could they could exploit you, but she did. And I'm sorry about that. And you shouldn't own any of that. Any counselor, I'm not a counselor, but any counselor worth their weight would tell you that
right.
100% that is not your fault. And so don't own any of that. So,
Yeah,
um, yeah,
yeah,
Brian, won't you have the last word?
yeah. I just want to echo that, Shawn. What you have done coming on here today is shown the courage that all the people we've talked about this on this podcast lack. You've shown the integrity. When we talked before, you mentioned to us that you hoped by telling your story that you would help other people with similar stories. And that's an act of love. You sacrifice something of your own, something intimate and deep to yourself to help other people. And I can't say enough um, not only how proud I am of you, but how honored I am that you would trust us
Yeah.
to have this conversation with you. Um, so you're a survivor. Um, you shouldn't have had to survive being in a church and a Christian school. That's something nobody should have to survive, but you're a survivor. Um, so, man, thank you for being here and thank you for telling your story.
All right,
For
everybody.
sure.
Listen, this will be on a Wednesday night, and Brian and I are going to come on Sunday night as well, just to wrap this up and put a little bow on it. But yeah, uh, stay tuned and like this and share this episode with anybody you think could benefit from a survivor. And Shawn's a survivor. He is. I echo what Brian said. So have a good week, everybody, and we'll see you on Sunday night. Tune in. All right.
See
Bye.
y'all. Bye.